Alright, so class, we're in chapter 13 and 14. Right, these chapters on derivatives and risk management. Alright, so this is for 2 weeks, right? For this week and for the following week, chapter 13 and 14. It's on derivative and risk management. Alright, so now risk management becomes so important. So we're going to look at the motives behind risk management, why you want to manage risk, then the derivative securities that we use, alright, to mitigate the risk. Alright, we're going to be learning about derivatives and fundamentals of risk management. Alright, so let's start with the question itself. Why might stockholders be indifferent to whether a firm reduces the volatility of its cash flows? Right, so stockholders feeling indifferent means they are not very concerned. Alright, they're never taking it important, right, whether a company reduces its volatility. Volatility means instability. Right, certain companies, they feel they must have stable cash flow. Alright, some companies, they never bother about whether having a stable cash flow. Alright, and these shareholders of these companies, why they don't really bother whether a company has a stable cash flow? Or so that is the question. Why do they don't bother whether the company have a stable cash flow or not? So the answer would be because diversified shareholders may already be hedged against various types of risk. Okay, so if a shareholder do not invest in a single company, alright, but they have invested in multiple companies, right? They've invested in multiple companies. If let's say they have 100,000, they invest 10,000 in 10 different companies. Alright, so those are the shareholders. We call them as diversified. Alright, not the one who invested only in a single company. So diversified shareholders, you assume, alright, for example, those who invest in 10 different companies, they have already hedged against various types of risk. Okay, because one industry if not doing well, the other 9 industries is still doing well, still giving you return. Alright, if another industry is facing a risk, maybe the other 8 companies could give them a return. Alright, so because they are diversified, not all the 10 companies is going to face an issue. So that is why diversified shareholder, they have already hedged, they already manage various types of risk. Alright, so that is the reason they never bother whether that particular company has a stable or unstable cash flow. Alright, so reducing volatility increases a firm's value. Right, reducing volatility means instead of having unstable cash flow, a company should have a stable cash flow. Right, it's like every month they have 50,000 cash inflow. Alright, for the last 12 months, every month they have around 50,000 cash inflow. Then you call that as a stable company. On the other hand, if a company have first month 10,000, second month 50,000, third month negative 30,000, that is unstable cash flow. Alright, it's not consistent. So reducing volatility increases firm's value. Alright, if you are making a company from unstable cash flow to a stable cash flow, alright, a firm's value increases if it leads to higher expected cash flows or reduced WACC. Alright, so when a company make a stable cash flow, it becomes valuable or more valuable only if it leads to higher expected cash flows. Alright, if you want to make it stable, alright, you want to do that because These are the two reasons. One, you want to increase the cash flows. All right, you want to earn more cash flows, or you want to reduce the cost of capital. You want to reduce your overall cost of the capital. Only if two of the one out of two, or if both objectives met, then reducing volatility will increase the firm's value. If it doesn't achieve this objective, reducing volatility does not increase the company's value. Okay, so as I mentioned, hedged means a transaction that reduces the risk of investment. If you do nothing, your risk is you can't mitigate or you can't reduce risk. You must do certain things. All right, the things that you do or transactions that you do to reduce the risk of investment is what you call as hedge. Right? The reasons that corporations engage in risk management. All right, so nowadays companies, all right, last time CEO was the third person, then you have CFO, all right, then you have COO, Chief Operation Officer, right? And now every company, especially the large companies, you have CRO, all right, they become equally important, Chief Risk Officer. So why corporations engage in risk management? So these are the reasons. Let's look into it one by one. Reduced volatility reduces a bankruptcy risk, which enables the firm to increase its debt capacity. All right. So the first objective is you want to reduce the bankruptcy risk. All right. How and when a company goes into bankruptcy? When a company took debt, right? When a company take a loan from a bank or financial institution, and if they never pay the interest or they never pay back the principal, that's when the company goes into bankruptcy. All right, when there will be a situation when there is a situation where they are unable to pay the interest or principal is when they don't have sufficient cash flow. All right, so you want to reduce the volatility. Volatility means, like I said, the first month you get 50,000, second month you get let's say 20,000, and third month you get negative 10,000. There's no cash flow. All right, it's a negative cash flow. Maybe you have taken more debt, all right, more credit, which means you don't have money to pay interest. And if you don't have money to pay interest, then the bank will take legal action against you and make your company go bankrupt. All right, so a company that has stable cash flow, so like every month they get 30,000, 30,000, 30,000, then they have sufficient cash to pay the interest, then they won't face the bankruptcy risk. All right, so that's the first reason. Second reason would be by reducing the need for external equity, firm can maintain the optimal capital structure. All right, if a company has a stable cash flow, cash inflow especially, then there won't be a situation where you get negative cash flow. All right, if every month you get 30,000 inflow, all right, surplus, then you don't need to worry, right? But let's say the first 2 months is positive, then the third month you get a negative cash flow. You don't have the money to run your operation, so what do? You take more debt, more loans. If you take more loans, all right, your capital structure will change. Right? If let's say you can't get the loan, then you need to issue more shares. So when you issue more shares, it's going to liquidate your current shareholders shareholdings, right? And you might not able to maintain your optimal capital budget. So that could be the second reason. And the third reason would be volatility. Reduce volatility helps avoid financial distress costs. Alright, financial distress cost means, let's say the companies, because you're not paying interest, and the company, a bank's taking legal action against you, then you're going to have financial distress costs. Alright, you have to have you have to hire lawyers, therefore legal costs, administrative costs, liquidation costs. Right, all those are additional costs for the company that you can avoid if you have stable cash flow. And the fourth reason would be cost of borrowing. Right, a company that have stable cash flows, like every month, last 12 months you have a stable cash flow. You have 50,000, the next month is 45,000, and the following month you have 6,000. You have a stable cash flow. If that's the case, when you approach a bank and you request for a bank loan, you will definitely get a bank loan, and you will get at a lower rate because your company seems to be at a lower risk because you're showing a stable cash flow every month. All right, so you can able to reduce your cost of borrowing. When I compare with a company that has volatile cash flow, one month is higher, the next month is lower, then you become a risk. You fall under risky category, and the bank might charge you at a higher interest rate. Okay, and the last reason would be because you want to reduce the higher taxes that result from fluctuating earnings. Okay, this, for example, the first year your profit was 30,000. Second year your profit was 300,000 because you never managed to keep it stable. One year was a lower cash flow, the other year it's 300,000 higher cash or higher net profit, and the following year goes back to, let's say, about 40,000 profit. So when this kind of volatile cash flow, when at a lower profit you are paying lower tax, but when you are in the upper bracket, alright, upper tax bracket, when your profit is high, you may be paying higher percentage of tax, right? Your lower tax bracket, maybe you pay 5% tax, right? But if the upper tax bracket, you might be paying 20% tax. All right, even way higher, you might be paying the maximum 25% tax, so 26% of tax. So you can avoid that. If your profit is almost same every year, then your tax will be at a lower bracket, and you will be saving on your tax payment. All right, so that is the fifth reason. All right, so, and the reasons for the why company wants to manage risk. All right, let's move on to financial derivatives. Financial derivatives are traded products that have developed from securities and currency markets. It is based on underlying financial security whose value is affected by changes in the interest rate. Alright, so traded products means you buy and you can sell. Alright, it's developed from securities and currency market. It means you must have an underlying financial security. Alright, there must be a base. Alright, for it could be for use for loans. Alright, you can use derivatives for your loans so that you can mitigate risk when it comes to managing your interest rate. Alright, because interest rates not always fixed. When the market interest rate reduces or increases, that will affect differently the company. Alright, currently, as you can see, when the economy is not so good, then the government or the Bank Negara will reduce the interest rate, right? On the other hand, the market is doing well, they will increase the interest rate. So you'll be facing this fluctuating interest rate. So you must have an underlying security. It's like you must have a loan, then only you can think about how to mitigate the risk. If you don't have a loan, then you don't even bother about thinking about financial derivative. Alright, same goes to currency market. If you're a company who deals with foreign suppliers, foreign customers, then you think about financial derivative, whether you want to mitigate the fluctuation in the currency markets. If you don't have to deal with currency exchanges, then you don't even bother what mitigating the currency exchange risk. All right. So let's look at the advantages hedging against known risk and the disadvantage speculation. All right. So what is the advantage? Interest rate derivatives are hedges used by institutional investors such as banks to combat the changes in the market interest rate. Alright. So usually financial institutions, so they are the one who will be dealing because majority cases of fluctuating market interest rate. So individuals don't really face much of these situations. Okay, so for example, alright, so let's say currently you are paying 4% interest rate for a loan. Okay, they're paying 4% interest rate for a loan. If next year the interest rate increased to 7%, from 4% increase to 7%, what happened? You are required to pay a higher interest rate. From paying 4%, next year you need to pay a higher percentage of interest. So if you already know the news, the indication that tells this there are possibilities of these things to happen, so what do? You need to try to mitigate the risk, manage the risk. Alright, you know currently it's only 4% interest. Next year there is kind of a forecast that it's going to increase to 7%. Alright, so what do you have to do? You try to mitigate the risk by going into hedging, financial derivative. Alright, so hedging against known risk, something you already know and you try to mitigate the risk. Alright, by taking hedging, what do? Alright, you are trying to mitigate the risk. For example, now it's 4% and it's assumed going to increase to 7%. So what do? You go into option or go into a derivative where you buy at a 5% interest rate. Means currently it's 4% and you already secured a deal that in the future, next year, you will be only paying 5% interest rate. Alright, because you get into a transaction. Alright, so that doesn't matter whether next year it increases to 7% or 8%, you have already secured or fixed the rate that you have to pay, which is 5%. So that's how you mitigate the risk. Alright, if you don't make any transaction, if you don't do anything, what will happen? Now you're paying 4%, next year you might end up paying 7%. Alright, if you're dealing with millions of dollars, that's a huge amount of commitment. That's a risk, right? So hedging against known risk, that's the main advantage. You're trying to mitigate the risk that they already assumed is going to happen. What about the disadvantage? The disadvantage is the speculation. Individual investors are more likely to use it as a speculative tool. They hope to profit from the guesses on the direction of the market, interest rate, or we can use the same thing for currency market. Okay, so it's like what's happening if you're, let's say, US dollar, $1, let's say you have to pay 4 ringgit to purchase. Alright, so $1 you need to pay 4 ringgit to purchase it, and next year it's already forecasted that you need to pay 4 ringgit 50 cents to purchase the same $1. So what do? Companies, if you know, they're trying to buy derivatives to manage it, because let's say instead of paying 4 ringgit, now you need to pay 4 ringgit 50 cents for the same $1. Alright, if let's say companies that have supplies from overseas, they need to pay more, right? 50 cents more for $1. What do you think the individual investors do? They will purchase, for example, those who have money, let's say the purchase 1 million USD for 4 million ringgit today. Alright, when your exchange rate is $1 for 4 ringgit. Alright, so now you bought for 1 million USD equivalent to 4 million ringgit. Next year, when the price increases, the currency fluctuation and your currency rate now is for 1 USD, you have to pay 4 ringgit 50 cent to purchase. Alright, 1 USD equals to 4 ringgit 50 cent. What would the individual do? Earlier he purchased for 4 ringgit, and next year he will sell it at 4 ringgit 50 cent. So by doing that, he gains 50 cents per dollar. Alright, if you purchase 1 million USD for 4 ringgit, now you sell 1 million USD, you're gonna get 4.5 million ringgit Malaysia. So you gain about what? Half a million ringgit. So that is called speculation. Right, so this basically, this of course for individual is good, but the whole idea of this is to mitigate the risk for companies. Alright, not for individuals to use it to make money. Right, so let's start with the first derivative. It's called interest rate option. Alright, so interest rate grants option holder the right but not the obligation. Alright, so these are the keywords. It gives you the right. Right means it gives you the choice, but it doesn't make you obliged to do so. Alright, it doesn't force you to do so. So that is why it's called option. It's give you the right, not the obligation, to deal an agreed interest rate at a future maturity date. Alright, so you go to the bank, and you are dealing with the bank saying that currently this is the rate, and next year I want to fix at a certain rate, so that in the future when the market interest rate increase, you will be only paying that specific amount. Like I said, now it's 4% interest rate. In the future, assumed it's forecasted that the market interest rate is going to increase to 7%. So what do? You go into another bank that provides this the hedging interest rate option. So you get into a transaction today saying that next year for this amount I want to only pay 5% interest. Alright, so you sign the agreement saying that next year whatever it is, I'm only going to pay 5%, and the bank gives you a agreement that it agrees to give you a 5% interest rate. So in the future when the market interest rate increases to 7%, alright, you will only pay 5%. Okay, so interest rate options are tailor-made over the counter. Tailor-made means you go to the bank, alright, you can specify exactly how much you want. What is the rate you want? When do you want it in next 6 months? Do you want it next 2 years? How much is the exact amount? Alright, everything can be tailor-made as what you want. Alright, they can be purchased from major banks with principal amounts. Alright, you need to tell, do you want it for 1 million, or do you want it for 5 million? Do you want it for, let's say, 100,000? Length of the interest period. Alright, so do you want you are taking this interest rate option for, let's say, from next year June 2021 until June 2022, or is it for the next 5 years? Right, length of the interest rate, the currency, alright, the exercise expiry date, and all this can be custom made as per the need, or as per what you want from the transaction. Right, so Then you negotiate with the bank, and once agreed, you have to sign the agreement. So therefore, it becomes a binded agreement. Alright, that's an example here. Okay, so let's say a company afraid the interest rate. Alright, currently the interest rate you are paying 4%, and you're afraid next year it's going to increase to 7%, from 4% to 7%. Alright, so you decide to hedge. Alright, make a transaction so that you can mitigate the risk. So you enter into an interest rate option at 5% next year. Alright, so look at the situation right now. Currently you're only paying 4%, but the market has forecasted that possibly, highly possible, the next year interest rate going to increase to 7%. So if you do nothing, if next year interest rate increases, then you will be paying 7%, alright, instead of 4. So you want to reduce the risk, you want to manage the risk. So you go to a bank, you want to negotiate and tell them you want to fix at the rate of 5%. Right now it's 4%, next year you only want to pay 5%, which means whether the interest rate increases 7% or not, you will only pay, you cannot say whether increase or not, because options is quite different, right? Because I mentioned it gives you the right but not obligation. Alright, so there, for options we have two scenarios. Alright, so now it's 4%, next year you are already fixed with the bank that you only pay 5%, right? Alright, so next year, alright, next year when the market interest rate increase more than 5%, for example, if let's say it increased to 8%, you see you forecasted 7% but increased more than that. It means what? From 4% it increased by another 100% increase. What do? If the market interest rate is actually 8%, since you have already agreed, since you have already have an agreement with the bank, you will only pay 5%. So you will exercise the option, right? You will use the option. Alright, the reason why you have the interest rate option. Alright, so since you have interest rate option, instead of 8% you only pay 5%, which means what? If you don't take any action in 2020 you are paying 4%, in 2021 the market interest rate increased so high that you have to pay 8%. If you do nothing, you have to pay very high interest rate. But since you have an agreement interest rate option, you only pay 5%. You save 3%, right? So that is the reason. That's how you mitigate the risk. On the other hand, let's say the forecast went so wrong that the market interest rate actually dropped 3%. Alright, instead of increasing, the market interest rate dropped to 3%. Then what do? You don't exercise the option. You don't activate or don't use the option. Therefore, when the market interest rate dropped, you will only pay 3%. Alright, that's why you have to be clear, because interest rate option gives you the right but never forces you to use it. Okay, so that is a it's really a win-win situation here. When increase, you pay lesser. When it drops, also you pay lesser. It's a win-win situation. Alright, so let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of option. So unlike FRAs and futures, option allows buyers or sellers to take advantage of favorable interest rate movement while also limiting any downside losses. Okay, of course we're going to be learning what is forward rate agreement and futures. Okay, so both of forward rate agreements and futures do not have this option. It won't allow the buyers to take advantage when there is favorable interest rate. Alright, so that is the good thing about option. Option gives you, when the market interest rate dropped, you can take the lower rate. When market interest rate increases, you take the rate you have fixed. So both ways you win. Alright, is over the counter means you go to the bank, you can tailor made. Alright, so it's like tailor made your right, nowadays you can tailor made your pants, your shirts, your specs, so many things. So you can buy or you can request exactly how you want it, how much you want it. Alright, so that's a good thing about over the counter. And compared to FRA for agreement, these options may be exercised at any time. Alright, so if you bought it for 2021, you don't need to wait until 2021. Even before that, you can exercise the option. What's the disadvantage? All options involve a premium payment. Alright, nothing comes free, right? So even though it's a win-win situation, there is a premium you need to pay. It's a upfront premium. Whether you're going to exercise or not, there is a fee, there's a premium you have to pay. Alright, and this is expensive to buy, particularly when the interest rates are volatile. Alright, those times when the market interest rates are volatile, then the premium would be higher. Alright, so that's a disadvantage. Alright, so let's move on to, okay, so before going to futures, let's look about FRAs first, then we come back to this. Forward rate agreement, FRA, is an OTC, just like option. OTC means over the counter. You go to the bank, whether you want to lend money or borrow money at a future at an interest rate that is agreed today. Alright, so you go to the bank, let's say you want to borrow 100,000, alright, in next 6 months at what rate? Alright, so you made the agreement. FRAs allow borrower investor to lock in the borrowing or investment rate for a future period of time. Also, it can go both ways. Whether you want to borrow, whether you want to invest. All right. So at whatever specificity you want to have it. So let's look at the advantage and disadvantage. Okay, so unlike short-term interest futures, FRAs can be tailored to specific requirements of a customer. Right, can be tailor-made. Unlike interest futures, the interest rate option, there is no front-end fee payable. You don't need to pay anything upfront. That's a good thing about forward rate agreement. You don't need to pay anything upfront, unlike futures or unlike options. Nothing is payable or receivable until the settlement date. Let's say you you made a forward rate agreement in December 2021. Until December 2021, you don't need to pay a single cent. Nothing, no extra fees, nothing to be payable. The disadvantage, on the other hand, would be its over-the-counter instrument cannot be resold. Alright, so there is a benefit between tailor-made, because you can go to the bank. Let's say you wanted to get an agreement for interest rate for a loan worth, let's say, 48,000. Alright, you go to the bank, you say I have a loan worth 48,000 and now I'm paying 4% interest. Next year I only want to fix at 5% interest. So you negotiate, you got an agreement. The problem is you cannot sell this agreement to outsiders. And the reason is you have negotiated exactly as per your need. And you cannot find another company that have exactly same situation as yours. So there is no secondary buyer for this forward rate agreement. Okay. Unlike the interest rate options, for the buyer option, FRA's binding agreements that must be settled at the end of the settlement date, which means when you agreed at a certain price at a certain time, alright, once the time comes, you have to make the settlement. Whether the market interest rate is in your favor or not in your favor, it doesn't matter. You have to make the settlement. So that is a disadvantage. In options, as we learned earlier, it gives you the choice whether you want to exercise or not. But FRA, no choice given to you. Whatever you agree, you have to settle it on that date. Alright, so that is a disadvantage. Alright, so let's go back to futures. Alright, so we have learned options, FRA. Now let's look at future contract. Interest rate futures similar to FRAs. Alright, however, they are not negotiated directly in the bank but are traded on the future market. So it's a bit different compared to options and FRAs, right? Options and FRAs, you can go to the bank, both of it can be tailor-made, right? But future contract, there is a separate futures market, right? It's totally different because banks are not providing this service. Just like share market, you have a separate futures market. In the futures market, you cannot negotiate because they have a standardized contracts. Alright, they might have for 500,000, they might have for 100,000, they might have for 1 million. You cannot go and ask them, I need for 1.25 million. No, they don't have that. You cannot say I want for 48,000. No, they don't have. They have maybe 50,000. They might have 100,000. So you have no negotiation power when it comes to futures. The advantage, short-term interest rate future contracts are more liquid. Alright, the reason is more liquid. See, let's say you purchase 100,000 worth of futures, right? A standard contract. And after 3 months, you feel you don't need that futures contract. So what do? You can sell it to the outsiders. It's just like futures, just like share market where you can buy and sell your shares. In futures market, you can buy the futures and also sell the futures. Okay, so it's more liquid. You don't need to wait until it matures. You can do it prior to that. Alright, so that's the advantage. Disadvantage is it involves upfront payment of the margin. Alright, so just like options where you need to pay premium, here you need to pay upfront payment, right, in the beginning itself. And is available only in standard contract sizes for a limited number of interest rate instruments. So you cannot negotiate, cannot tailor-make because they only have standard contract sizes. Alright, so that is futures.